I'm Sabina Vaught, Director of the Kinloch Commons for Critical Pedagogy and Leadership at the University of Pittsburgh. Welcome to the Digital Freedom Leadership Project. This project is a series of brief conversations with leaders doing freedom work and is designed to support educational leaders everywhere. Joining us today for a conversation about one of her leadership principles is Dr. Valerie Kinloch, Renee and Richard Goldman Dean of the University of Pittsburgh School of Education. Among many other current and past leadership positions, she holds the role of immediate past president of the National Council of Teachers of English. A highly awarded leader and scholar, she is author of multiple books, including the critically acclaimed Harlem on Our Minds, Place, Race, and the Literacies of Urban Youth. Dean Kinloch, thank you for joining me in conversation as part of the Digital Freedom Leadership Project.
Thank you for having me. I am excited to be in conversation with you.
Likewise. I'll start by asking you to share just one of your leadership principles and to describe for viewers and listeners its origin. So where did it come from? Where did you learn it? How and why did you develop that particular principle?
Okay, so again, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to think with you about leadership and leadership principles. There's so many, of course, that I could talk about. I think the one that I gravitate toward mostly is courage. And it's really important to be a person who has courage. And then when we add a leadership role on top of that, it's important to have the courage to listen critically, to think with each other deeply, but also to be decisive in how we make decisions. And I think that courage connects to how we can be fair and honest, but how we also can be humanizing in our interactions with each other. And it takes a lot of courage to be a leader. It takes a lot of courage to, let me correct this, it takes a lot of courage to be a leader who is humanizing and who believes in equity and justice, especially when oftentimes I might stand or sit with myself. I think that has a lot to do with the courage that needs to be a part of who we are and the decisions that we make. And when I think about origin stories, I think about where did that courage come from? And I think in all honesty, it did not come from leadership programs or trainings or institutes. I've gone through a lot of them. And although they've been helpful, they serve as reminders for what I think I already know from experiences that I've had in my familial communities. So courage for me comes from being in community with other people, particularly my family, being able to witness my mother and father's interactions with each other, being able to grow up in an environment that was caring, but also hard, struggle, and being able to think deeply about who we are in the midst of so many external forces dealing with racism, classism, and sexism that we oftentimes never named, but we had the courage to actually continue moving forward as a community of people, even in the midst of our disagreements and different approaches to thinking about living in the world as free human beings. So I think that's where it comes from. It comes from my family, particularly my father, who had the courage to live the life that he decided he wanted to live, and he pursued it. So that's where it comes from, I believe.
Thank you for sharing that, and such a beautiful description of where the principle of courage came from. I'm wondering if you would share with us a story of when you had to put that principle of courage into action in your leadership. I'm sure there were many, but just one.
There are many stories. I will say the courage to confront oppressive behaviors and an oppressive culture and climate at one of my places of employment. And the courage to say, if we truly believe that we have a right to be here, however we got here, we all are here. And if we believe that we should be here and space should be provided for us to be here, then how is it that we are engaging in certain behaviors that counter the work of freedom and liberation and transformation? How is it that we're engaging in these behaviors and these stances? And so one concrete example would be trying to understand the history of a place and of the people in that place, in that institution, and how certain decisions get made at the backdrop of other decisions that should get made but never do. Having the courage to ask questions that I think should have already been asked. What type of environment do you seek to work in? What type of culture do you seek to actually foster? What is it that you're seeking to leave behind when you're no longer here? How does it not just benefit you, but benefit other people? You know, are students at the center of the work that we do within an institution of higher education? And if so, why are students not involved? Where are students? And so asking those questions were just basic questions for me. But then going from those questions to saying, can you name the things that are just, that are not right and that are right? Like, what are the things that you believe are right within this culture, within this institution, within this school? What are the things that you seek to change? And hearing people's different perspectives, but being able to have the courage to continue to push the conversation, even when the conversation may have felt uncomfortable for them and for me. We can't get to that transformation and liberation if we're not engaging in these uncomfortable conversations, because that means something is happening. And that's the work that I think I have been doing. That's the work I'm still trying to do with people. And, you know, I think the interesting thing here is about leadership. When we are in positions that can affect positive change, having the courage to understand that we have to, and that we have to be in conversations with each other. But we can't allow someone who might be in charge of a unit, a program, an initiative, dictate the structure of it when everyone else feels oppressed. And so without going into lots of details, I would say that the courage to hopefully move people forward in productive ways, even if they don't want to move, the courage to interrupt processes and structures that have been in place that have only benefited a few people and not everyone else. And I think doing that work within institutions, that work is fundamentally important if we seek to make the place better than how we found it. And it takes a lot of courage to do this work, especially when at times you feel as if you're doing it without visible support.
Thank you for that. I love that story of moving from your family and your father having the courage to live the life he wanted and for himself and for his family and community and in a larger oppressive and repressive context. And then thinking about what that looks like in the almost the hidden part of leadership work, figuring out those relationships and power dynamics and the courage that takes, because I think sometimes some of us hear the word courage and think of the spectacular, these sort of big moments of courage. And one of the many things I'm appreciating from your story is that courage is really maybe things that never, see the light of day, but it's the work that actually makes freedom change. So I'm really appreciating sitting here listening and learning from your story. Thank you for that.
Thank you. And I appreciate the freedom change at the end there, because courage requires us to engage in this work, to shift these paradigms and to reimagine these structures with the hope of getting to that freedom change. And how can we get to freedom change if we don't have people who are courageously leading and thinking and working even behind the scenes? And some of those people we would never probably even imagine doing the work, but they're doing it in order for someone like me and you to have this conversation about courage and leadership. And I think that's the thing that I honor, the voices, the perspectives, the experiences of people who have been doing this work, but who are oftentimes not named, and the courage to say, I don't have to be named, but I will continue to do this work so that others can take this work on and get to that freedom. And that's the goal of working anywhere, and particularly within institutions of higher education, in my opinion.
Dean Kinloch, thank you.
Thank you.